that, all you guys are going to do is click on the share. Now we're going to share the note card.
Emily, we can hear that. Welcome to AbilityMKE Now, live on River West Radio. My name is Sue Roscoff, and we are so happy to be here tonight. AbilityMKE Now is a show all about integration, bringing people with disabilities and people that don't have a disability together, enjoying life here in the Milwaukee area. We all have different abilities. And here at AbilityMKE Now, we dive into this topic of diverse abilities. The concept of disability hits a wide range of possibilities. We could be talking about physical or mental disabilities, the deaf and hard of hearing community, blindness, chronic pain, mental health diagnosis, goals of substance use reduction, and the list goes on. We all have our own experience with disability, whether it's our own or with people we know or people we encounter in our daily lives. Here at AbilityMKE Now, we break down the barriers and celebrate the ability in all of us. I am so happy to be here tonight with some great friends of our show. And to introduce them, actually, first of all, we'll bring in Miss Emily Gomer to go ahead and do some introductions. So, Emily, come on in.
Okay, make myself here. Maybe.
You're good. We can hear you.
Oh, here we go. That would help. So our first guest, well, actually both guests, we met through the Happy Neighborhood Project. But our first one is all about website accessibility with the ADA compliance and so on. So Trevor, why don't you come in here and say a little more about who you are, what you do, that kind of thing.
Well, sure. It's great to see everybody. As you well know, I go by the Web Detective, also known as Trevor Gibbs. You know, the persona is bigger, so at the end of the day, why not live by it? I tell people that I help to protect and serve your brand. Primarily, I'm going to look at your digital thumbprint or fingerprint and turn it into a footprint so you can be discovered. One of the main elements that will always we address is websites, because at the end of the day, it's the prime place where we get our information. It's where we do our shopping. It's where we get entertained. It's where pretty much you can find anything that you can waste your time or spend your time on. And when we talk about the two elements of commodities, time and money are the two most important ones. So if we're doing it online, let's make sure it's there and it's accessible. So I will try my best to bring everybody to that online place where it's accessible. It just means that we find that we have good colors and good fonts and maybe sounds and captions, all the things, because at the end of the day, I often remind people something like, why do businesses market to people online? When you think about the amount of money spent online, the second largest group spending something like $460 billion a year online is by the disability community as a whole. There's only one group larger. I don't call them spenders. I call them influencers. They're teenagers, mainly because they tell their parents what to spend the money on. So let's focus our business on people with disabilities so they can get the products and the service that they deserve and that they want.
Excellent. And I know a good friend of the show, Marianne Ambrose, is often Marianne of Waikiki. She talks about you a lot, and that's where very much with me, your reputation definitely precedes you, because I've heard your name a lot, and I love all the good things that you're doing. And I know she shares out pretty often about what good things that you are able to do for websites and to make that difference, because I don't think everybody understands that there's certain things you can do to make your website compliant in so many ways. there's ways to make it better so that it is accessible for everybody.
That's so true. And, you know, I think most people think very quickly when we say your business is wheelchair accessible. Technically, I'm making your website wheelchair accessible.
It's a great way to think of it. I love that. So, well, and Emily, let's go ahead and bring in our second guest, and then we can open up our conversation between all of us here.
Okay, so now we move into the accounting business to Arizona with Derek, who also has a school. So Derek, why don't you come in here, say a little more about
Yeah.
who you are, what you do.
Yeah, so I go ahead and I save the world one spreadsheet at a time, and relieve people's anxieties with taxes and just keeping their business running. And as you mentioned, I also run a high school uh, aimed at actually, spending time with the kids and working on their development, not only academically, but socially. So I was actually just really proud right now. I got an email from a student that they asked for an extension on a homework assignment. And I told them, thank you for asking, because their behavior before was just to try to pretend it didn't exist. So now we got them, hey, can I have extra time? I'm not done yet. I'm like, yeah, that's great. And we've actually had conversations on how that's not always going to be the response from everybody, but at least they're doing their part. I also, here in Tucson, Arizona, I serve on the Disability Commission. I'm the mayor's appointee, and I really love the comment about, the wheelchair accessible business from the business standpoint, but a lot of times it's not actually accessible. And so that playing around with that word accessible, and also kind of getting lately, I've been getting education. So I've been talking to some friends who are visually impaired, and how they have to go through life and how I don't think about what they're thinking because I can see at the moment. And so just kind of learning that, perspective and experience is always something different for everyone, and just trying to keep that in mind. One of the things I have learned in different meetings and that I actually enjoy is that for the visually impaired, or for those on the radio who can't see us, to describe who we are. So I'm a Latino male, 50 years old, wearing an exquisite Armani suit with an amazing tie. No, I'm wearing a hoodie because I'm lazy and it's 5 p.m. here. But that's one of those things I never would have thought about until I started talking to some of my visually impaired friends that are attending Zoom meetings, and they're like, you have no idea what's going on. So one of the things I noticed that they have people describing, what's going on, because I don't, like, I'm guilty, but I don't think of like, oh yeah, you're visually impaired, you can't see. And try, and as a math teacher, that's something I struggle with a lot too, that someone brought to my attention was, how do you teach advanced math without using visuals? And every time I went to go try to explain something, I wanted to draw a picture. And so, how do we get around that? And one of the responses in trying to research that I got was, well, then they just don't do advanced math. And I'm like, that's the most horrible response you could have given. Thank you. So just trying to keep in mind what other people have to go through regardless. And even someone without a disability, a lot of times I approach math from, I'm doing this equation for the thousandth time. This is their first time. So just keeping that again, that perspective of an experience of someone else instead of jumping into my own.
I think that's a great perspective too, because I think we're all guilty of that at times. We all know what our own experience has been, and sometimes it's hard to put on that other pair of shoes of, what is it like to literally, instead of using a pair of shoes and walking around, we have friends that use a wheelchair all the time. Their pair of shoes is wheels. It's
Yeah.
not good, not bad. It's just different. And to do math when you're visually impaired, that's one of those things that I've never thought about. And yeah, how do you overcome that, that challenge. And there's a way. I don't know what it is. I've never tried, but that's, again, it's a new thing. For me, it's something I haven't done before. I tend to be, actually, I'm a very visual person. I'm a very visual learner. So that one kind of hit me when you said that. I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know what I would do because another friend has used the phrase tab, temporarily able-bodied. So it's what you said, I currently have my vision, that is
Yeah.
something that people don't always want to think about of, okay, this works now. It might not always work. I can hear now, but I might not always be able to, or use my legs or whatever it might be. A lot of people, I think, just kind of brush things off when you think about disability because it's not affecting them personally today. But
Well,
someday, some way, somehow, whether it's themselves or a family member or a friend or who knows, there's all sorts of things that I think can be shared and help get others ahead of the game and think about these things before it affects them personally. And so I love that conversation. So well, go ahead. Oh, sorry.
so no, so I just wanted to, for my own self, wanted to tell you a little story that happened today.
Sure.
So because I kind of say my biggest disability is my ego. So I had to actually leave the house, which doesn't normally happen, because I work from home, and I went to go lead a meeting today, a networking meeting in person. And I was in such a rush that, normally I have different wheelchairs for different occasions. And I didn't take the one that I needed. It's lightweight, it's easy. And for some reason, I didn't have any canes in the car either, which is really weird for me. So I show up and all I have is my super heavy 100-pound electric wheelchair, nothing to take it out of the car. Now, the easiest solution to this is ask someone for help. And everyone has always been willing to say, yes, I'll help you load that in the car. Not today. I'm not going to take any help today. So I parked my planter. I'm unloading from from the car to the planter, and then when I was done uploading onto the planter into the car passes by. I didn't want them to stop and offer help, so I'm pretending I'm just hanging out. My biggest disability is my ego, and that was like an hour experience when I could have just said, "Hey, can you help me lift this chair into the car? It's heavy."
You know, I can appreciate that a lot. Yeah. Go ahead, Trevor.
I was going to say, isn't that the same with or without a disability? It's quite
Yeah.
often it's like, oh, let me try something. No, I think I won't ask this because I might sound silly, or I might not sound
Yeah.
quite so intelligent, or they might think that I'm weak. And I think sometimes when we think about sexies, the two, a female, like, oh, this is heavy. Now, as a male, we can be insulting, saying, would you like me to lift that? No, I'm strong enough to do that myself. But if it is too heavy, then you ask yourself, and then you think, do you secondly think that, am I being just weak or am I being female? Is that a disability?
That that's where the conversation can go so far on all this because I think we all get caught in those moments of, oh, I got this. I can do this. And to actually get out of our own way along the way is something that is humbling sometimes, or it's just hard to do. I know of a friend that we do a lot of adaptive water skiing with, and he's a wheelchair user. He's like paralyzed from the waist down kind of thing. So he's got good upper body strength, and is able to do amazing things on the water with all by himself. He doesn't do our traditional we're going out there with side skiers. He does it all by himself. He can get up on his wakeboard. It's a seated wakeboard, and he can go backwards, he can skip the weight, he can do all these things.
Well,
But that's tiring, right? He gets out of the water, and everybody wants to like help push his chair up the ramp and all that, and he's like, no, it's like, ask first. Because he's like, that's his feet, that's his his mode of transportation. he can wheel himself and he'll ask if he needs help. And that's one of those things that, honestly, that was one that I had to learn kind of the hard way of, I want to be helpful. I'm just going to push for you. Wait a second. No. I've seen it. Even with other friends, I've learned that whole thing of, ask, can I help you? Would you like help? Or are you fine? Don't assume that just because they've got wheels means I'm going to be the one to come in and push that chair for them. That's one of those little things that ask and ask the person. That's another one that I've observed too, of asking if somebody has like a care person with them, the people will automatically want to ask them instead of the person, for example, in the wheelchair. That's something too that go ahead, Trevor.
Yeah, exactly. Taking it back to a scenario that I had with my mum because when she was in a wheelchair. So I was her carer. So at some point we have to go to the shops and buy clothing, and we have to go and buy underwear. And we walk into the shop, and the shop assistant looks at me and says, "And what would you like?" I said, "Well, I don't think I'm the expert here to actually ask for what my mother needs, but maybe you'd like to ask her."
I love that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Talk to the person who needs the service or the product you're serving. Don't just look because they're head height to you that, oh, can I help you? And now I actually think it actually people in wheelchairs actually get their own back. So I was in Orlando at an event in one of the parks, and I thought, oh, here's somebody in a chair, and I thought, oh, I'm going to kneel down so I'm face to face so I can talk to the person because I knew it was going to be a long conversation. And this net breaking aspect of back here, I think wheelchair users have the strongest neck muscles in the world because they're constantly looking up. But anyhow, I get down there, and as I'm going down, he's elevating the chair up to a vertical position, and I was like, "Oh,
Love
now I've got to use my neck muscles to look up to you." Um, I thought that was so was it outstanding to do that, and he went, "No, I can see what you were doing. I thought it'd just be more comfortable for you." I went, "Yeah, my knees are not as good as they used to be anymore."
I love it. So, well, I got to admit one thing here. So, Derek, how long have I known you? I'm not even sure
Sure.
now.
Yeah.
A long
30,
time.
40 years.
I wish. Well, it's been a while. It's
It's
a
been a
couple,
while. Yeah.
at least a couple years. And you know what? I've always seen you in the box here, right? On
Yeah.
a Zoom screen. I did not know until your story today that you're a wheelchair user.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't. It was funny coming out of the pandemic. Everything's Zoom, and so yeah, it's
Yeah,
just this square.
it's the square.
And so I was going to meet some people in person. I'm like, hey, just so you know, I'm in a wheelchair, and they literally said, no, you're not. I'm like, huh? What? Yeah,
Uh,
just so because so it's one of those like I get it. Like you see someone, you think everything's okay, and then they show up in a wheelchair. So I just kind of want to let you know. Yeah, and it also helps with planning. So like I have a good amount of friends that will be like, hey, we're gonna go out to dinner. Do you want to come? And I'll be like, yeah. And they're like, okay, we're gonna change the restaurant because we know that one restaurant has those three steps. And that's and they get angry about it as they've gotten to know me because we just want to go have dinner,
yep.
but there's three steps. And so it changes everything. And so I think people, again, to the experience, if you don't know someone who's going through something, you don't think about it. Like we just don't. There's a lot I don't think about in other people's lives. But then when you have someone and you see what they're going through, and quite frankly, it affects you as well because you can't go to that restaurant. So
They lost
and we
business
talk a
that
lot.
day.
Yeah, so I do look at as, the disability population as an economic driver. Like there's business to be made, there's business to be lost, and if you can go ahead and be one of those facilities that not only just says we're accessible, but actually makes it accessible. and to whatever that means. And there's a couple of places, at least here in Tucson, where we've talked to them and they're like, oh, we didn't think about that. Okay, let's spread the tables out a little bit. Let's, they kind of cemented. It wasn't really a step, but it was about a 3-inch lip, which can be difficult for people. So they cemented it down to kind of be like a little ramp. So there's a lot of people that are interested in really providing accessibility. They just don't think about it because that 3-inch lip is accessible to them. I don't think about a lot of stuff that my visually impaired friends go through because I don't. So in one of the conversations we usually have, I call it those damn dots. Like at an intersection, they have the tactile dots so that they can know where the curb ends. That kills my momentum. So I would ask them, I'm like, what's up with those dots? I know you use them, but what are they for? And can we just get rid of them? Because I hate them. And they're like, no, that's how we know. I'm like, oh, okay, I didn't know that. I didn't know what alt text was. I would always see it. I'm like, what is that? And then one of them explained to me that that's how they, with the device, they can tell what a picture is. And I'm like, oh, so then I started taking great care to like when I post a picture to put the alt text in. Now, thankfully, AI does it, so it's great. But like, I didn't know what that was, or even, at one of our city meetings, a couple of the other commissioners mentioned documents are being sent out at PDF. Our reading devices can't read PDF. And I'm like, I even told them like I always wondered why they sent out a PDF and a Word document of the exact same thing. And because I didn't realize that they needed the Word document to have the devices read it. So I'm big on people asking questions. I love when kids ask questions because so I used to work in a school with some very unruly kids. And at the time I was using a cane and none of the kids were disrespectful. And they actually kind of changed their attitude. So they were kind of just being tough and hard. I'm the tough kid. But then they would ask me, so mister, why do you use the cane? Like they would just change personalities and people are like, oh, so this is what's going on. And you know, it's one of the things I would stress to some of them too, of like when they said they wanted to work construction. I would never say don't work construction, but I would tell them, learn some of the office stuff because we don't know what's going to happen, whether it's genetic or you get into an accident or just we get old. So right now I have friends who are still working construction in their 50s and it's not like when they were in their 20s. And so how long can you do that? So being prepared for the future, regardless of being able to, sustain a living because those disability checks, one, like I find it funny. People assume I get a disability check. I don't because I work. And if you work, you don't get a check. And those checks aren't worth much. So you can't just count on that disability check because it barely covers anything. So you have to kind of plan out the future.
Excellent. Trevor, go ahead.
Recap on something that Derek brought up. When you think about why are the rumble strips there? When we think about ideally, he's using the curb cut in the sidewalk, which was designed for people in wheelchairs, and then complaining about why the rumble strips there, so it could actually help the people who are blind, apart from the blind person who was actually in the wheelchair. Now, the thing that Derek and most people tend to think of when I have a disability, it's my disability and the group of people that share the same disability with me. So you think that your group is a minority of a minority of a minority group, that you're so small that you don't have a loud enough voice. But this is why I tell people, especially when it comes to the websites, you have to adapt for all aspects. So whether it's visual, whether it's color, whether it's comprehension, whether it's mobility, you have to do that. And when you think about it, when you take that as a ratio and a power of number, 1 in 4 people have a disability. Now take this as a number. I love numbers. One person who's disabled, they live in a family. Theoretically, there's a mother and a father and hopefully a sibling or a cousin or an uncle that's a close relative. So that means everybody is going to get and hear and know about the experience of the person who's got the disability. And when they go to a business or anybody and they express that they've been accessible to me and they've done a wonderful service, the awareness should be so much easier to spread to 3 people through the one person who's disabled. But for some reason, when we talk about government or the rest of it, it's the 3 people that are non-disabled working in government trying to supply a service to the 3/4 of the population.
Yeah, I've heard Kurt say this all often about how the disability community is the largest minority out there. And it's all encompassing in with age, with you name it, it hits everybody some way, somehow. There, if we can connect with the disability community, whatever that is, because again, it's different for everybody, right? One person's disability is not the same as the next person, and there's so many different pieces that it touches, but it all is related in many ways as well, and then we can make such a difference, both something simple within yourself with what you're doing, with whether it's your business, whether it's your website and promoting what you do, with communicating, with whatever it might be. There's so many things that we can do on a small level here that really does make a big difference. Like what you're saying, that one person has a disability, but there's 3 other people that know very well what's going on, and how can we really branch that out and make a difference beyond just our small group, right? How can we help educate others on what that significance is? Because it really is huge.
Well, I think the first place you start at is that we're all human.
Yeah.
So now you can cross all the other barriers, whether it is a sexual one, whether it's a political one, whether it's a religious one, whether it's a race one, whether it's a language one. And you think of all those, they all turn out to be groups within the group, but we're all in the same group of humans.
Exactly.
I don't know. According to a lot of websites, they're convinced I'm a robot.
I think that's AI trying to pretend.
Smarter than everyone, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, I know we're coming up towards the end here. I want to give you guys each maybe like 30 to 45 seconds. Just what's on top of your mind here at the end of our evening. I love that you were both able to join us here with AbilityMKE Now. So many great things. Derek, do you want to go ahead and share whatever thoughts you might have at this point in the evening?
Yeah, so I want to encourage people that have a disability to speak up, because a lot of times, yes, especially like in cities, there is a lot of bureaucracy and things don't get handled the way they should. But unless it's even known that there's a problem, because a lot of times people aren't thinking about certain things, you have to let it to be known what you need. That you need that piece of sidewalk that's popping up, you need that repair, or that intersection is unsafe, or even just like something that I crusade a bit for is a lot of public transportation spaces are not safe. And so just voice up so people can know what the problems are, because they might not know that they exist.
Excellent. Trevor, 20 seconds for you.
I'll take it from the other way. Let's say, as a business, there's great opportunity to have return of investment and integrate. And there are so many products and services that we all take for granted that originally were created for the disability community. So don't think of it as an added expense. It's actually something that will give you return of investment, and it does your reputation so much more than your money will.
Awesome. Guys, I really thank you.
Thank you for having this